Hey, y'all, hope y'all are doing good. This episode here is the coaches that are on the hot seat going into the 2025 football season in the SEC. And guys, I am dividing these coaches into three categories. They're either in the ice cold department, meaning that they have nothing to worry about, that they're going to definitely be back in 2026 unless they win 0 games, or a scandal happens, or they leave, something disastrous. They'll be back in 2026. The next group is their seat is warm, meaning they'll probably be back in 2026, but they could be fired if they have a bad season. Or worse than the year before. And then obviously the last category are coaches that I think are probably going to get fired this year unless their team substantially gets better in 2025. So guys, without further ado, let's go right through these coaches and let's talk about them. And the first category that I'm going to talk about are the coaches in the ice-cold category. The first coach that I want to talk about is Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart's not going anywhere. He's won 2 out of the last 4 national championships. He won the SEC championship game last year. The next coach is Steve Sarkisian. Steve Sarkisian won the Big 12 championship in 2023. He's took Texas to the playoffs in 2 consecutive years. To the playoffs. He's not going anywhere. Josh Heupel, same thing, led Tennessee to the playoffs, 10-win season last year. He's led Tennessee to in the last 2 out of 3 years, they've had over 10 wins. Shane Beamer for South Carolina led South Carolina to 9 wins, and they were only projected to get to 5.5 before the season began, so he exceeded expectations. They're tickled to death with him down there at South Carolina. Eli Drinkwitz, he's led them to the last 2 years. They've at least had 9 wins in the last 2 years. He's fine. He's not going anywhere. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was only projected to win 3 games last year. They won 6, and then they won their bowl game, which gave them 7 wins. And Clark Lee, he's not going anywhere. His job is secure. The next coach is Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin has won 9 games at least the last 3 years. He's doing a great job down there in Oxford. He's not going anywhere. Mike Elko did not have a great year at A&M last year at Texas A&M. Only won 8 games, but it was his first year, and he still did better than Jimbo Fisher. So they're not wanting to get rid of him, even if they have a bad year next year. I don't think Mike Elko is going anywhere. So that concludes the first category, the coaches that are safe, I think, next year at all costs. Now, the next category that I'm going to get into here are the coaches that are on their seats a little bit warm. Their job is not secure. They still could get fired. The natives are getting a little bit restless with them, and they're not too happy. So if the season goes awry, it goes really bad, they could get fired. So first coach I want to talk about is Brian Kelly. Now, Brian Kelly's in his 4th season. The first year was pretty good. He took LSU to the SEC championship game, but they've been very mediocre other than that. And one thing that kind of blows my mind on LSU the last 3 or 4 years is they've lost the opening game the last 3 years, and they were better in my opinion in each of those games, but they looked like they were not prepared, and that makes Brian Kelly look really, really bad, losing the opening game the last 3 years. So Brian Kelly could definitely get fired at LSU if they come up with a 6 or 7 or even maybe an 8-win season. I think he's safe if he gets to 9 wins. He's got a quarterback coming back in Garrett Nussmeier, who threw for over 4,000 yards. So I think at the end of the day, Brian Kelly will be back if he chooses to, but there is a possibility he could get fired. Now, the next coach that I want to talk about where his seat is a little bit warm, but it's not hot, is Billy Napier. Now, this was a guy that was on the hot seat last year, but his team rallied. They ended the year with 7 wins. The bowl game gave them 8 wins. Had an impressive season at the end there. Beating Ole Miss, beat LSU, beat their rival Florida State, won their bowl game. So they're not too pissed off at Billy Napier right now, but at the same time, he gets off to a rough start. They get a 6 or 7 win season. He could definitely be fired too. But I do think at the end of the day, Billy Napier will do enough to stay around another year in Gainesville. That's Billy Napier. Now, the last coach that I want to talk about that I think's, his seat's warm, but he's not on the hot seat, is Kalen DeBoer. Now, last year was his first year at Alabama. The year before that, he went to the national championship game with Washington. He's a very proven, very good football coach, but he was in a no-win situation last year. He succeeded the greatest college football coach that ever lived. So there was nothing he was going to do that was going to make Alabama happy, right? They did win 9 games. They were only projected to win like 9.5, so it wasn't that far off what people thought they were going to do. But it was the losses that he had, right? He lost to Vanderbilt. He lost to Oklahoma, and that just looks bad. I do think that I think Alabama will be a little bit improved this year. He definitely needs to win at least 9 games this year, though. If he goes out here and wins 6 or 7, who knows what they'll do at Alabama. He could get fired, but I think it's very highly unlikely that Kalen DeBoer gets fired unless he just wants to move or get out of that toxic situation, because he's really in a no-win situation down there in Tuscaloosa. It doesn't matter if he wins the next couple national championships. I don't think you're going to make them happy. But I think Kalen DeBoer is safe, but his seat is warm. Now let's get to really the topic of why you tuned in here probably, right? The coaches that are on the hot seat in 2025. And the first coach that I want to talk about is Mark Stoops. Now, he's had a really good tenure at Kentucky. You can always pencil Kentucky into a bowl game, and, Kentucky doesn't have expectations like Georgia or Alabama. You get to a bowl game, and Kentucky's pretty happy. Now they're kind of wanting at least 7 or 8 wins. Well, Mark Stoops drastically, underperformed last year. They only had 4 wins. A big part of their issue is they're kind of like Auburn in the fact that they've just not gotten a good proven quarterback, and it's bit them pretty hard. And so I really think Kentucky's kind of getting tired of him. He kind of flirted with A&M with their opening last year, and they're not happy with him at Kentucky. I think Mark Stoops is going to have to win at least 6 or 7 wins at the minimum to keep his job. I think at the end of the day, Mark Stoops is probably going to get fired at Kentucky next year. The next coach on this list is Brent Venables. Brent Venables had a good year in 2023, but 2024 was not a good year. They did somehow get to 6 wins. They had the miraculous win over Alabama at home, but Oklahoma had a bad year. Quarterback was really bad, Jackson Arnold. They had the backup quarterback playing like half the year in there. Defense was okay, but offense was really bad. They replaced the offensive coordinator, but it didn't really help them much. But winning 6 games at Oklahoma, a blue blood, is not going to get it done. Brent Venables better win at least 8 or 9 games, I think, in 2025, or he's gone too. They're getting very restless there at Oklahoma with him. 6 wins is just not acceptable. The next coach is Hugh Freeze. Now, this is a coach that really surprises me. Hugh Freeze has a very proven track record. If you look at his coaching career when he was at Ole Miss, when he was at Liberty, the guy's just won. But one thing he's always had wherever he went is he's had a really good quarterback. He's not had a good quarterback since he's been at Auburn, and he's put his faith in guys that he shouldn't have. He's not willing to go pay good money for a quarterback with this whole NIL thing, and it's really hurt him. Auburn only won 5 games last year. Here's the problem too. Auburn was much better in my opinion. I thought they were a lot better in 2024 than they were 2023. 2023 they won 6 games and they took a step back and only won 5 games. Could not close games out. Bad coaching, bad decisions. It's a bad year for Auburn. They blew games in the fourth quarter, blew a double-digit lead to Missouri, blew a lead to Oklahoma. These were games they dominated and still found ways to lose. So I really think that Hugh Freeze, if he doesn't win at least probably 8 games, he's gone. I mean, Auburn has a track record that they'll fire you even if you win 9 or 10 games. I mean, that bunch down there just don't care. They're like the mafia. They'll just cut you off. I mean, so Hugh Freeze should be very concerned about his job. I think it's about 50-50 whether he'll be back in 2026 or not. And so the next coach is Sam Pittman. This is a coach that last year was definitely on the hot seat. Made a really good move of going out here and getting Bobby Petrino to lead his offense. Got a really good pickup in the portal with Taylor Green. Got another running back out of Utah. and they did just enough offensively. Got a big upset over Tennessee at home, top five opponent. So I think, all things considered, Arkansas was pretty happy with their football team last year. But they left a lot out there. They could have had a much better football season if a couple things would have happened, right? Penalties and things like that. They blew games against Oklahoma State. They blew the game against Texas A&M, and they could have easily been an 8 or 9 win team if they would have been a little bit more disciplined. But I think if Sam Pittman can get to 6 or 7 wins, he might be back again another year. But they've been very patient with him there, I will say that. So it's up in the air whether he'll be back or not. But if he doesn't make it to a bowl game, I can definitely see them firing Sam Pittman. So I do think he's firmly on the hot seat still. And then the next coach that I want to talk about here is Jeff Lebby. He's going to be into his second season at Mississippi State. They only won 2 games last year. 2 games. Had a brutal schedule. Mississippi State was not very talented. He did not have a very good roster. Offensively, they were okay. Defensively, they were just awful. Arkansas scored over 60 points on them. They were competitive for the most part in a lot of SEC games. The games you thought that they'd get beat by 50, they actually hung around, got beat 17, 20 points in that range. So they played very hard, but he's going to have to win a lot more than 2 games next year if he wants to keep his job. He wins 2 or 3 games next year, he's fired in my opinion. But they've brought him back for 2025, and as long as he wins, I think at least 5 games at the maybe 4. He definitely needs probably win 5 games though if he wants to be back in 2026. So Jeff Lebby, he needs to improve, he needs to be better next year if he wants to keep his job. So guys, that is the 3 categories that I've went through here: ice cold, warm, and hot. With these coaches, and I went through all 16 coaches and kind of told you where I think they are right now going into 2025. I appreciate you guys watching this video, and I'll talk to y'all later.